Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kevin Kumire. I will be your moderator for tonight. I'd like to welcome you to another session of Dialogue with Prof. Mandiru Kuni. Tonight's session is a continuation of the De-Traumatization, Decolonization of the African Mind series. Tonight, Prof. Mandi will focus on the systematic reconstruction of Africa. Where do we need to focus as a continent? Is it our education systems? Is it our politics and governance? Is it restructuring our economics? Where do we need to decolonize? Prof. Mandi will give us a 40-minute presentation and shed some light on the topic. Then the floor will be open for 40 minutes for contributions and questions. The session will close and the conversation will migrate to our WhatsApp and Telegram groups, where Prof. Mandi will share his final thoughts for the night. This session will be available for viewing after 24 hours on our YouTube channel, Dialogue with Prof. Mandiru Kuni. Please like, subscribe, or follow. Session rules. Please keep your microphone muted at all times. Please use the hand reaction button if you wish to ask a question or contribute. Questions and contributions can be shared with the administrator or the moderator via direct messaging. Not all questions will be responded to, but will be included in the media pack, which will later be shared on our social media platforms. Thank you. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and greetings all. Last session, we discussed how colonial trauma actually develops a mindset where you are set in your ways, you keep repeating what it is that you are trying to run away from. And it is Carter Woodson who summarizes this syndrome in his book, The Miseducation of the Negro. And he basically says, look, and I'm quoting, if you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his action. You see, because you already got the man. When you determine what a man shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he will do. If you can make a man feel that he is inferior, you do not have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. If you make a man think that he is justly an outcast, you do not have to order him to the back door. He will actually go without being told. And if there's no back door, you'll actually create one just to meet his status. So this is what we are trying to fight. It's a long-term strategy. In today's discussion, I'm summarizing it as follows. This is a long-term agenda. We first have to understand what it takes to actually create a successful society. Africa was a successful society before. What does it take to reconstruct it back to success? What are the key institutions that need reconstruction and refreshment? We're going to go through those. And we need to first also agree what development is, because in our conversations across the board, we are not even fully agreed what development is. And I'm going to offer some ideas how to resolve that issue. And then we will then discuss, if we're going to have a systematic reconstruction of society, what are the strategies? What are the strategic interventions? And then finally, I'll go into what we need to do, what we need to stop doing as Africans, and what we need to continue doing because it's not too bad, and what we need to start doing because we're not doing it now. So successful society is not difficult for us to discuss because we were very, very successful societies in the past. So the first important quality of successful people in society is confidence. In fact, confidence is about 75% or more of what it takes to succeed. But confidence only comes because you already have a strong cultural and family background. There's a strong self-belief, self-reliance. You're not relying on anybody else. You've got a lot of stamina to go far. So confidence is at the top of my list. Boldness is number 2. You have to be able to take calculated risks, because if you are not bold, you won't take any risks. You don't hesitate. So I always say the colonials were not smarter than us. We were actually much smarter than we are, what they were, but they were just more bold than we were. They were more courageous to take us on. They still try to show that kind of confidence and boldness, which I'm afraid now we have figured it out. We're going to fight it squarely. So we need to build all that into collective confidence and boldness. It cannot just be individual or individual countries. All the way from families to the nation, to the sub-regional organizations, to the Africa Union, we have to show total collective confidence and boldness. Yeah. So it actually doesn't take much. Like I've said before, the world should know if you touch one of us, then you have touched all of us. Once the Africa Union at that level makes it clear to the rest of the world, you have your stupid policeman touch one of our people or somebody of African descent, you have touched us. You know, once the world knows that you abuse an African, you have abused every African, the world will pay attention. Tomorrow, I mean, if the Africa Union were to make such a statement tomorrow, not even day after tomorrow, tomorrow, the world will change immediately and start respecting Africans. The third quality of successful societies is savings and investment. And we used to be big on this. I mean, most of us, like my generation, would not even have any education at all, except that our culture was pregnant with ways to save everything, including the environment, and invest. Fourth is ambition. We have now got to go back to what we were before, highly ambitious society trying to achieve new things, new heights, set ourselves fairly high standards, think big and think positive. And fifth, it's about learning fast. You cannot just wait for others to move fast and learn fast and then you copy and paste. No, we actually have to be learning faster than everybody. Now, in the past, we had to learn faster than the Europeans and the Americans. Now we have to learn faster than the Chinese. In fact, the test to know how quickly we are going to be a great society again is how fast we learn, not just from ourselves, but from everybody else. So all this needs courage and determination. We don't give up. In fact, like one of my favorite songs goes, we can't give up now. We have come too far to give up who we are, and who we are is probably the most important identity in the world. And also to realize that don't worry about superpowers anymore. The era of superpowers is coming to an end. Africa, when we are at our best, we're not even trying to be a singular superpower. We will be a superpower amongst many. Within the next generation, there won't be one superpower. We're going to have 2, 3 superpowers. There will be the US to still be a superpower, China, India, probably Indonesia and Brazil will join. Nigeria and South Africa might be there. The future does not have one superpower. So if we Africans unite and are organized, we will be just as good a superpower as any. So what are the key institutions that need reconstruction? I'll start by pointing that historically, African society was strong because of strong family systems. That was our most important institution. And then the community was strong because families were strong. And then thirdly, we looked after the environment looked after us. Across the board, from food, health, we were just healthy and well-fed. The feminine thing came with colonization. So 3 institutions were pretty strong historically: family, community, environment. When you look today, those are the 3 weakest institutions. So what colonialism did was give us a new model which builds everything backwards, because today we're trying to build a house starting at the roof with no foundation. Everyone is trying to, we want a strong economy, we want a strong government. How can you have a strong government and a strong economy when you have weak families and weak villages and communities that are not self-governing and self-sustainable? It's not going to happen. So we actually, when it comes to reconstruction of Africa, we have to start from the bottom. What we were left with is all these other institutions which are silos, and they are not going to replace a strong foundation. But we're going to look at how we reconstruct the whole cultural and educational system, religion and spirituality, politics and governance, economics and business, technology and environment. So in our future sessions, when we actually go blow by blow in reconstruction, we're going to take each one of these. Today, we will use education as an example just to show how we're going to do it, how Africa should be doing it. Next slide. Yeah. So, but first, let's agree what development is all about and what it is not, because from what I've been seeing in our conversations, as well as broadly my own experience over the last 40 years working in Africa, development is also upside down. We have to tip it the other way around. We have to start with people. Development is about people, building people, not toys. Modernizing and not westernizing, because once again, people think development is just copying and pasting what the Americans and the Europeans have done. Thirdly, if you look at our values, our happiness index is still the highest in the world. It doesn't matter what you read and hear, words, maybe it's Scandinavian countries. It's not true. Africans still have the highest happiness index in the world. Why? Because Africa is the place where it doesn't matter where you go, it doesn't matter what the crisis is, it doesn't matter how poor and quote unquote, inverted commas, people are, they're gonna be happier than any people anywhere else in the world. Now, that's the strongest thing in our value system in reconstructing a future that I'm gonna come back to. So as I say, it's not westernization, it's modernization. So today, Africa is living proof that the so-called advancement that we have seen over the last 200 years, it was pretty good and pretty impressive. I mean, we should admit that that is what history is about. So Western civilization was indeed, gave us some really good stuff in technology, entrepreneurship, but some also lousy things in individualism and consumerism and all that kind of environmental destruction. But you cannot call development something that somebody else is experiencing somewhere else in the world, because as Florence Sachkonye said, you don't miss the toys that you don't know about. So some goat-heading peasant in the Himalayas won't miss a Ferrari, because you give them a Ferrari, it doesn't mean anything to them. They would rather have 2 more goats. So our minds have been trained to yearn what others have, not what we actually have. But it's collapsing anyway, because all civilizations eventually pick up and die off. There's no civilization which lasts forever. So it's not a kind of us and them. It's actually just life. It is for us to better ourselves. There's no debate there, but it must be relevant and it cannot be too costly for us in terms of our culture, belief systems, and general well-being. So that's, in summary, how I would want us to debate what development is. As I said already, so boldness is what Africa needs more than anything else to be able to chart the future. Fearlessness, defending our values, defending our beliefs, defending our continent fearlessly and fiercely, you know. So I put here 9 important sources of boldness. If we just have half of these going at all levels, from personal, into family, to national, to continental, we will be far ahead in our quest to reconstruct African society. First and foremost, you can never defend anything you are not in love with. The reason why we are not defending Africa the way we should is because we have fallen out of love with our own continent. We have fallen out of love with our own identity. We have fallen out of love with our own selves. So falling in love is the single most important thing when it comes to boldness. Anything you fall in love with, you will defend. In fact, because remember, courage is not absence of fear. You know, courage is overcoming fear because you love this thing so much. In my case, like most Africans, you love your mother. It doesn't matter what anyone says about your mother, you love it. Anyone says anything stupid about your mother, it doesn't matter how big they are, you're gonna take them on. That's what love does. If somebody touches your loved one, you will fight. Okay. Secondly, it's purpose. Having a burning ambition, desire, passion, a grand goal, having that in ourselves ingrained also builds boldness and confidence. Action orientation is the big thing that we are missing. Our actions are in response. It's kind of like reaction to what is happening to us, just seeing where the trends are happening. There's not much action and orientation when it comes to redesigning our institutions and rebuilding serious and new mental models that will create the society that we want, you see. Number 5, and probably just as important as number 1, having a support base. Support base just means you have kindred spirits. We Africans are prepared to defend ourselves at any point, because if you don't have anywhere to run to, if at Africa Union level, the 55 countries, each one is timid, you're afraid of tackling the former colonial masters because they will apply sanctions on you, or they are gonna, whatever they can do. Well, if Africa Union was our base, that's the base you run back to. Because when you go back to your family, which is a good support base at personal level, you get unconditional support and commitment. We have failed to create support bases in the reconstruction of Africa, so that at every level, there are places that individuals, families, communities, countries can run to and be protected. But at the moment, there's no support base because they're all infiltrated. At country level, you can't run to your regional body, whether it's SADC or ECOWAS, because they're already infiltrated. You can't run to Africa Union because Africa Union is just a mimicry of the EU. It's not a strong African institution prepared to defend all African countries, no matter what. And like I've said just before, learning fast, having stamina, preparedness is a big source of boldness, because doing your homework, knowing where you stand, your strength, your weaknesses, practicing, preparedness really, really builds boldness. So that is actually what we need to be able to conquer fear. So in terms of reconstructing African institutions, I'm proposing this model. Obviously, we're not going to be able to apply it to everything we want to apply it to, or the 5 key institutions I put up. But I'm just putting this because in terms of strategy, it doesn't matter whether we take education, culture, the economic, or the political systems, the governance systems, the way we handle the environment. All those key institutions cannot be analyzed at one level. We need strategies that analyze from the bottom to the very top of strategic perception. So if we look at how colonialism constructed, say, the educational system, you start at the top. They had a certain vision. You see, the colonials had a vision of, well, we need to go and dominate these people. Our culture has to be what they admire. They should be able to look up to us and look down upon themselves. They should be our servants. So that was their vision. If that was their vision, that is what creates the mental model, which says, okay, these people, the educational system has to be hierarchical. It has to be based on our language. And it has to filter people to the top who eventually, anyway, report to us. It has to be a copy and paste education, which makes them follow instructions and not go into open-minded strategic thinking. So that's the mental model that creates the educational systems that we see today. So when we see the classroom situation and the instructional designs from basically preschool to secondary schools to university, the systems are created for mimicry, for trying to usurp other people's knowledge, not for creating new knowledge, etc., etc. So those systemic structures to be broken down, we have to understand what the original vision was that created the mental models, that created these systemic structures we're trying to actually unbundle. But unfortunately, most of the time in Africa, we are not dealing with those three higher levels strategies. We are usually dealing with patterns and events. We see things that are not working at event level. You know, then we respond to that and the patterns. We never react beyond that, whether it's the political system, governance, the way we're handling the environment, the business economic situation. And like Einstein said, you cannot solve a major problem by solving it at a lower level than it was created. So we are using basic day-to-day analysis of our situation, why the economy doesn't grow, why the educational system does not produce the people we really need, why we consume other people's products and we don't manufacture our own local raw materials. We don't analyze those institutions at systemic structure and mental model. So what I'm proposing is we're going to go into each of these key institutions and understand how colonialism, what the vision was, what's the action mode? The action mode is a vision can only be generated. It cannot be copied and pasted. It is generated by deep-seated visioning of a people. Africans, we have not done that. We have not envisioned the kind of African society that we want to see. We envision an African society in the eyes of what colonial models were given. So even at that level, we still have a lot of work to do envisioning a truly African society where the family coloniality systems are truly African. Once we have envisioned that, we compare with what the colonials had created, then we have an action mode. Then we go back down to the mental models, which basically then say, how do we maintain strong families like we have had in the past? How do we maintain strong community systems that we have in the past? How do we have a strong relationship with the environment so that we are part of it? Because if we don't have those, we're not going to change the systemic structures which will give us those things. We'll keep using the same school system, the same hospital system, the same political party systems, which are not creating the society that we want. So this is the model I want to leave with you. We can discuss it. I have used it on these institutions in analysis. So I'm quite happy in the future sessions, site sessions, to be able to go deep into this, because I think this is the most important task we have to do to get to the action point. So I've already covered this, because development really is about people building their capabilities so that they can build their own things. They can dream for themselves and have the skills and capacity to reach out for their own dreams. It is not possible to dream on behalf of others. Or we create toys for you, we create high-rise buildings for you, then therefore you're developed. It's not going to happen. And as Mandela said, poverty is not an accident. But like slavery and apartheid, it is man-made and can be removed by the actions of human beings. This is where the strategic systemic restructuring comes in, because if you do not value your own knowledge system, you don't value yourself, you are not able to then address this self-imposed, what you might call conditioning. Yeah, I think we've dealt with these issues before. I think we can fast track. We can fast track all this. We can fast track. So we can fast track because I covered most of these. So to strengthen what I just went through in terms of the diagnosis, I already pointed out how African society in the past was built on strong family, strong community, strong environment. and how trauma led to the decay of those institutions. And we still have those as our former institutions. So you can go deeper into the cultural trauma to see the action points, because this is what is missing in our analysis in our universities. I know that in many countries, including my own country, Zimbabwe, universities are beginning to now interrogate these issues, go deeper into the heritage issues, and actually understand how they imposed legislative systems and administrative systems, all that can now be understood back into our own systems and reconstruct. So I won't go deeper into the trauma aspects, which we covered last time. So I would go on to the next slide, because I want to then basically touch the other institutions and just give pointers how these major pillars of society can be reconstructed. I just did education, language. We have bad news on language, because there's no nation in the world, it doesn't matter where you look, that has reached high level of civilization through using foreign language as a medium for formal education, law, and how government is run. There's none. Okay. So we are stuck. If we think we are going to be the first peoples in the world to be advanced using other people's language, other people's software or DNA, is bad news. There's absolutely no problem in teaching languages as foreign languages, but our young children, age 0 to 7, they have to learn formal education in the mother tongue. And then you always learn the foreign language as a foreign language. People are told from a young age, it's not your language, it's a foreign language. It's actually a language that we learn so that we can converse with those people. But we converse in this language. Religion, the construction of religion is easy. We've captured that before, is to shift from these doctrine-based religions, colonial religions, to more spiritual-based understanding of our relationship with the universe and the world. Like I said before, the thing that sums it up in terms of the colonial mindset that needs to be reconstructed is how my Ghanaian friend tells the story of how on a Sunday, this smartly dressed young man is on his way to church and meets a white man on the way, and then goes back home and says, I met God on my way to church, so I might as well go back home. So this whole construction of religion, which I mean, if God had any color of any kind, then God would be black, because blacks were the first people on the face of the earth. So if men were made in the image of God, it would be a black person, and it would be a black God anyway. But now we have got all these pastorpreneurship, Ngangachi Profita syndrome, destroying families and destroying society. It's sad. So I am convinced in the next decade or so, we will see a major uprising against the spiritual fraud that's happened. I mean, in my own country, the Mwari spiritual religion was never what the Christians made it out to be. They came and stole the name. They call, in fact, most of this languages, local languages in Africa, they would steal the name. Like in the case of Zimbabwe for the Shona, you go into the Bible, it's Mwari, but Mwari is not a European god. It was an African god. But now, because of that spiritual fraud, it's used to trick Africans into believing that it's the same thing. Politics and governance, there's a lot to talk about on those institutions that need major reconstruction on the basis of those 5 strategic levels of reconstruction, so that it ceases to be an exclusionary process, because African political values are about inclusion. It's not a numbers game, kind of winner take all thing that the industrial approach to politics of Europeans has brought to the rest of the world. You just, elections mean therefore you have democracy. What's that? I mean, it's narrow-mindedness in terms of understanding how humans relate, because Africans were always great at relationships, and we used to fight and we used to compete, but in the end, it was never, ever genocide. It would always come back to integration. It would always come back to be inclusive. But now we learned this kind of genocidal approach to politics, and it's bad for Africa. The law we touched in the past is to be reformed, because African law has never been studied, even by us Africans today. There is no university which truly has gone into giving certificate, diploma, degrees, masters, PhD level in African law, based on an understanding of African legal traditions, African legal systems, where it all came from, how it is related to the culture, what the spirit is behind the laws, and the procedures that have to be followed to mete out justice. All that is now down the drain. It's just an assumption that it's only European laws which understand procedural justice. It's nonsense. Africans had more procedural justice than the Europeans did. And now it's all lost because it's not in our educational system, and it's not in our legal systems. So this basically therefore brings me to a point where I'm saying, as Africans, we need to agree moving forward what it is that we need to start doing, that we have not been doing, that we need to stop doing, that we should have stopped long ago, what it is that we actually need to continue doing that we're doing right. So I'll go through that as my last point of just some pointers for action. Yeah, the things that I think we need to stop doing with the immediate effect. We should stop building the house backwards and have all developmental ideas, the entire understanding of politics and government, the entire understanding of development is to start from the grassroots, developing people, not things, developing families, structures that are stronger like in the past, so that we don't have orphans who are destitute in the streets. It never happened before. We have need for strong communities again. When we have strong people, strong families, strong communities, and a strong relationship with the environment, we become unstoppable. We can create strong districts, strong provinces, and strong governments. Okay, because you can't have a system of development where all the grassroots is weak, then all of a sudden you have a strong economy, or all of a sudden you have a strong government. It's not going to happen. We should stop emphasis on mimicry in our educational system over creativity. We should stop imitating without thinking, because after all, what we are imitating is also going down the tubes. I mean, if we keep imitating everyone else, they're also now losing it. They're slowly losing grip, and we keep copying what is not working over there now. We should stop running from our shadows and rid of this identity crisis and fear. We should stop using foreign languages for education and only teach foreign language as foreign language. We should stop using foreign languages for government and law, because the majority of people don't even know how to enact a law in a foreign language. It doesn't mean anything for them in a day-to-day basis. It has to stop. We should stop this obscene and corrupted doctrine-driven religiosity and stop the spiritual fraud. We should stop economics of greed that we've learned from the colonials, economics of individualism, economics of consumerism, which does not really add to any form of health, bodily, materially, spiritually. So these are some examples of things that we need to tell ourselves to stop. And in our 50-year plan for restructuring ourselves, because it has to be a 50 to 100-year plan. A lot of what we need to do cannot happen in 10 years. It is more than that, but it has to start today. It is an ongoing process. It has to go beyond our own lifetimes. So yeah, some of the things we're doing well that I think we need to continue doing. We need to continue believing that colonialism actually failed to defeat African culture and identity. It actually failed. That's why we are still here, and that's why we are still talking about it. It doesn't matter how many of us fall by the wayside. The end of, the end game is not going to happen again. Colonialism, even in its present form, has failed to defeat African culture, and we should continue believing it and continue working towards that. We should continue erasing these fake borders that the colonials created for us after the Berlin Conference in whatever it was, 1855 or whatever. We should actually continue seeing a real integration of Africa, so that what is important is you are born an African, and that's all that matters. And this legal thing of therefore you're Mozambican and Tanzanian, it can continue as labels for, like I say, it doesn't disappear in 20 years, but it should be less and less meaningful. The volume should be down. The intensity should be down. What should be intensified is one Africa. We should continue erasing these fake European laws that we use to run economies and to run lives. The family laws are not reflective of Africa. The property laws are not reflective of Africa. There are many, many things. We should actually continue replacing these laws with African laws. We should continue rebuilding the educational systems to reflect African society and its realities and ambitions. We should continue borrowing from other cultures more intelligently, not just copy and paste. We should continue telling our stories. This is one of the most important things we need to do, telling our own stories in all respects, in all social media. We just don't need Nigerian Nollywood. We need every country to have a movie industry. We need to tell our stories, write our own history, and do so in all our languages and share. We need to continue with the awesome African fashion that is now emerging in the world and beginning to dominate the world. This will be the biggest fashion tradition in the world to come. We should continue with the really healthier African cuisine. We should be promoting African foods globally, because they're healthier, they're tastier. The world food system is for us to take rather than to be fed other people's low quality foods. We should also continue understanding holistic health. Africans have now realized because of COVID that holistic health, medicine is not health. Health is way beyond medicine. You need, the body heals itself. The food you eat, the herbs you take are part of the soil and environment that makes your system. And I think we should continue with that. We should continue with the emerging, really creative understanding of art and beauty and architecture, which the world is also beginning to pay attention to. And finally, we should continue rebuilding the Africa Union so that it becomes a more fearless institution. It becomes the institution to defend Africa fearlessly. Africa needs people fiercely and fearlessly. Then finally, the things that we should start doing that we have not been doing. First, we need a plan at all levels. 50, 100-year plan on the decolonization agenda. That plan, every country in Africa needs in its own development plan an understanding of what that means and how we're going to deal with it. And then collectively at regional level and at Africa Union level, we need a decolonization plan, not just for Africa, but for the rest of the world for two reasons. One, the colonial trauma is not only affecting the Africans, it's also affecting those who formerly colonized us. It's very traumatizing for an average white person to realize that they're actually not more superior to a black person. and that actually incapable of doing some of the things that they thought they were better than Africans, and all of a sudden black people are more capable than they are. It's very traumatizing because they were sold this lie that they are more superior. So that's why Africa, in terms of each individual African country and collectively at regional and continental level, we need a decolonizing agenda for each and every country in the world. We as Africans have to look at every country and say, how do we deal with China? How do we deal with the US, the Germans? We need a plan for every other country in the world, because at the moment it's the other way around. Every little country, Belgium, will have a plan for every African country, but we don't have a plan for a small little country like Belgium, the entire African continent. It's absurd. We should also start, like I said earlier, rebuilding society from the roots, and the people, family, the village. We should start pumping cultural content in Africa's development strategies, because at the moment we are not succeeding because our development strategies are bankrupt of African wisdom and intellect. We should reverse engineer a whole bunch of these traumatized institutions. We should start doing that systematically, like I said, at 5 levels. For each institution, it's a 5-level analysis and 5-level action agenda. We should start creating a new history for ourselves out of the past, so that we are not hung up in the past. We don't even have to be angry about it. We just have to release our energy. We are here to create a new history for ourselves, not to fight history. We need to create not thinkers and doers separately. We now need, like in the past, to have educational systems, cultural systems, which produce thinker-doer in one person, because knowledge only exists at the point of action. If you are not applying it, it's not knowledge, it's just information. Okay. And then finally, we need a Sankofa movement, a movement which connects all kindred spirits on the continent. I know myself, there are many other individuals and organizations working on this. I'm working on it in my organization. We need to connect people, like-minded organizations. We need heavy-duty networking to make it possible for us to reconnect Africa again with its historic past, where we were told by the colonials, your history does not exist. It did not really matter or exist before colonization. It starts with colonization. We need to break all that. We need to have the narrative back where we left it. We need to have our institutions understand that. Until we do that, until we create this Sankofa movement, it's gonna be a mammoth task for us to regain where we the confidence and the boldness and capacity and skill to reconstruct our institutions. So in summary, in conclusion, we have to modernize our institutions, not westernize them. We have to appreciate and realize that social and economic value in Africa is embedded in African cultural heritage. Everything we consume from overseas, we are consuming culture. If you go to a McDonald's to consume a hamburger, you're not consuming food, it's junk actually, but you're trying to consume some cultural thing which makes you feel like you're kind of a westernized. That's what you're consuming. That's why culture is actually the economics. It's everything, it's the social, it's the economic. So the world is tired of consuming Western and Chinese products. The world is waiting for African genius to unfold. The world is waiting for African products. Actually, it's thirsty for Africa's creativity and capacity to bring out new ideas, new innovation, new products, new services, new solutions. That's what we should be doing. Educational systems, upbringing, which says the world is waiting for us because they are tired. They don't have the creativity anymore. Okay. So instead of copying and pasting, we can never beat Americans at being Americans. They'll beat us every day. The Chinese will beat us at being Chinese every day, but we'll beat all of them any day, any time of day by being African. Truly wonderful, top level Africans. So we are all that we have, you know, and our answers lie within. And don't be told development is something else. The truth and only truth that matters is one that we discover for ourselves. And so these are the highest values that create peace, prosperity, freedom, and a truly advanced society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that thought-provoking presentation. I now open up the floor for questions and contributions. Please use the hand reaction button and we'll unmute you. Wadzanai?
Thank you very much, Prof. That was amazing. I think one of the things that resonates with this presentation is the fact that we're the authors of our own reality. And one of the things that I don't see in this presentation is the amalgamation of so many things and initiatives that are going on within Africa. One of the things is the development of this free trade zone that's literally going to change the nature of how we do business in Africa. And this is being spearheaded by the African Union. So have we actually thought about what happens when Econet or whatever the networks in Zimbabwe are now competing with the giants across Africa? It's going to change even the nature of the conversations we have, because I think one of the disconnects that we have in Africa is that the common man doesn't understand what's happening at the AU strategically. As much as it is, as Prof said, a wounded institution, it has done some of the things that Prof is talking about. We now will be able to travel across Africa and trade across Africa, and mostly ratified by most of the countries with unimpeded. And this is happening soon. The tax laws are changing across Africa. So we're going to wake up one day because we've been looking at a very insular part of ourselves. And Africa is going to wake up one day and everything that we've been hoping for, I don't need a visa to go to South Africa, I don't need to, a visa to go to Kenya, etc. It's going to be like that. And it's not very far off. So we can't do this thinking and this modeling without merging it with what's going on the ground. And what we need, I think, which Prof is where I didn't find the connection, is where are the people that are collecting these initiatives that are actually ongoing and spreading them to the common man. If development is going to come from the bottom up, from creating our families from the grassroots needs to know what's happening strategically that's going to infringe or impede, no, that's going to change the nature of the discussions they're having at grassroots. Because if MTN is going to come in and you can now converse with somebody in Nigeria as if they were down the road, that's really going to change the nature of our discussions. So I think somewhere we have a disconnect between what's going on and what we've been asking for as Africans, which the policymakers have been putting in place, but they are not actually telling us that these things are now in place and one day will be just, opened. And at the moment, a few individuals are already taking advantage of that and kind of already starting to to play the game in order to benefit. So if we want to stop the greed, we need to have everybody understanding what the policymakers, who are still important, are doing. Over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wadzanai, for that. Next, we have Lindy Webb.
Hello, everybody. And I haven't been on for a while, but so it's good to have an opportunity to listen to this. Very, very exciting, ideas that Prof has. And I want to pick up from where Wadzanai left off in terms of the connection between this kind of, social science level of thought and understanding of where we need to be and the political science side of things. The extent to which we can recreate the systems that allow us to change our politics. Because I think what Wadzanai was talking about, how grassroots level people would want to know what's going on. But I also think that at this stage, grassroots level people are concerned with basic needs. They're concerned with the ability to feed themselves, clothe themselves, send their kids to school. And I'm not sure, it's almost like a chicken and egg situation, in terms of how we rope them in while addressing their current sort of immediate needs. And our ability to convince them that in the long term, their long-term needs will be met, even if they sacrifice at the moment what their immediate needs are. So I'm finding it difficult to make that connection as well, and thinking that while I appreciate everything the Prof has said, that it's kind of idealistic and needing to put in place the practicals of it. Then I want to touch on the fact that we have so many Africans all over in the diaspora who are making, incredible creations in the sciences, in medicine, in all kinds of spheres. And yet it's not happening on the continent. There are very few countries on the continent where people are actually doing that in their own countries. And it goes back to, the absence of an enabling environment at home in our own countries, where we can actually capitalize on all that ingenuity, not necessarily for us to replicate what's happening in the West, but to utilize the skills and knowledge and genius of Africans to, as you say, develop Africa, including on the cultural side of things. And I didn't pick on all the disciplines, but we have people all over the world from our own countries who are doing amazing things. And how do we create that enabling environment, taking into account what the politics are in most of our countries. My last point is on the issue of language, which I agree entirely that within our own homes, I think that we have tended not to even want to teach our children our mother tongue, because they don't appear to be Western enough or sophisticated enough, whatever it is that we think is sophisticated. And the need for us to begin that in the very early stages. I have a brand new granddaughter. She's only 2 months old here in America, and I'm already teaching her Shona words, just so that she knows there's a different language from the language her parents speak. My question is, given the multitude of languages and dialects in our countries, how would we put together a system of educating in our mother tongue, given that we have so many different languages and we have so many different dialects, and the possibility that in itself could actually also cause conflict or discomfort amongst various sections of the population in our countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lindiwe. We'll have Doc F. Mukarati, and then Wadzanai, and then we'll get Prof to respond, and then we'll bring in Jess. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you very much. I don't know, can you clearly hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
No, thank you very much. Thank you, Professor, for this topic for discussion tonight. Systematic reconstruction of Africa. One key issue that I captured from the professor's presentation is that we need to modernize, but we need to modernize without specifically westernizing Now, when I try to reconcile this statement, we need to modernize without westernizing. How do we modernize without westernizing, especially when Prof made a point on law, the laws that we currently use? Currently, we use the Roman Dutch laws. But if we go back to the traditional systems, like Prof was indicating in his discussion, in his presentation, procedural laws, those laws that we used to use in the past, how do they fit into the modern world, the modern kind of transgressions, the modern kind of criminal activities, things like corruption and so forth? In the past, we did not have that high level of transgressions that would require that we have to use the Roman Dutch law. Yes, in the past, the nature of transgressions that we used to experience in the past, like for instance, if we are neighbors, a neighbor's cattle or goats, they stray into my field, it was quite possible to use the African, village procedural laws. We come together through a dare or a village council or something like that. But if we look at the nature of the crimes that are being committed today, I don't think it would be fair enough or it would be suitable enough to use such, past African procedural laws to deal with current levels of crime that we have today. So I just want Prof to elaborate on that point. How do we modernize without westernizing when the nature of maybe crimes and, transgressions that are being committed today require that we need to use Western laws like the Roman Dutch law? Thank you very much, moderator.
Thank you very much, Doc. What's the name?
Thank you. I just wanted to add something. Prof, in your model, where we're leveraging the various things, I don't know if you can go back to the model. There's something that I think is lacking in that model. It's the disruptors. For example, the mobile phone disrupted financial systems to the point where now a person in the rural areas can get EcoCash or whatever cash, M-Pesa in Kenya, whatever we're talking about. So when I look at this model of yours that goes, I took a picture of it. I don't know where it is. I'm trying to get the picture. When I look at this picture, when I look at this model, right, that talks about leveraging, yes, I found the picture. The action mode being, yes, thank you. Generate, reflect, etc. And you're looking at these mental models. When we innovate, right, I don't see innovate in this model because I think this is one of the things that Africa lacks. We lack an innovation fund. We lack an investment fund that invests in creators, that invests in people who dream. That's not here. The guy who did the windmill and whatever, and the girls who are making power and generating power in Nigeria as science projects. The person who has found, and it's all in Africa, by the way, the person who has found a DNA strand that can help us get over sickle cell. All of these things, these are the disruptors, these are the innovators. And in this, when I was looking at this, I kept thinking, where is the innovation? Where is that disruptor? Because all of these things will help us leapfrog into a different reality. We've been pulled kicking and screaming just because of COVID-19 and this pandemic into having discussions like this on Zoom. We've been forced to come together for funerals virtually. So these are the disruptors that need to be placed in this model somewhere because it doesn't work just like this. Things are happening at the same time. Over. I can talk forever, by the way, you've got to stop me.
Thank you very much, Wadzanai. We'll have Jess with the last question, and then Prof will respond, and we'll take more contributions and questions. So Jess.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Prof, for your presentation. I really like the way you define development is about people. I think it's very strong. And Frantz Fanon said that colonialism is a process of suffocation of the way we used to breathe. This is why he defended the idea of fighting against colonialism as a process of repair and restoration. So what I think, the independence came, but we didn't repay this process of suffocation. We still leave ourselves projecting them to the Western point of view. As you said in your presentation, we are thinking about westernizing and not modernizing. It means that we are still traumatized. But I would like to hear from you, Prof, how our parents who was born in the colonial era are transferring to us those traumas. Why the new generation of Africans like myself, who don't live it, the colonialism, are thinking from the Western point of view. We were educated here in Africa, we live here in Africa, we didn't live the colonialism, but we are thinking from the Western point of view. Why is it happening? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much. These are really wonderful interventions. Let me just make a general observation on the issues that are coming up. This is exactly the kind of conversation that has to happen. There's no renaissance that happens in a straight line. So if I present anything to you as if it's the absolute truth and no other truth, then also maybe I'm presenting it to you wrongly. I'm thinking that there are issues which we need to interrogate deeply and then continue to interrogate them the way we are actually doing now. So when you actually bring the Africa Union, free trade zones and all that, I couldn't agree with you anymore. You know, on a daily basis, I work with the Africa Union. I drop, if I get a job for Africa Union at $200 a day and the World Bank offers me $500 a day, I'll go and do the Africa Union. I'll go and do for ECOWAS because I believe we are building our own institutions. So don't get me wrong. When I criticize the Africa Union, it's because it's family. I'm criticizing from within. I'm not criticizing from outside. And I do strongly believe we do have the makings of a great future, but the balance is still not there. So take the free trade zone issue to start with. So Zanai, can you imagine that every single African country has signed some kind of agreement with every other little country in Europe? They've signed agreements with the EU, these, really crazy trade agreements. And many other really weird agreements we're signing at a country level. When we go to the World Trade Organization, we don't have any collective voice. We don't. So we build a futuristic free trade zone, but we're not protected. On our day-to-day basis, we have signed stupid agreements. So I would have said that although it's a fantastic development that we now see Africans organizing ourselves in free trade zones, it's still on balance not gonna be as profitable and as beneficial to the average African. It will be beneficial to those who are already kind of trading. But the truth be told, no Asian tiger would sign the kinds of agreements I see African countries signing with the EU and all that. So Wazana, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think the Chinese would do it. And I don't think they would have gotten where they are by signing those stupid agreements, which shut down your own manufacturing capacity, shut down your smallholder farmers, just in the name of whatever it is. So that's where I am, Wazanai. I'm saying these are good developments, but the bottom line is countries who are going to benefit, we are still in a middle income trap. It's not going to take us into highly industrialized countries, because when we look at our positioning trade-wise, but we still have signed very stupid trade agreements and no interventions from the regional bodies, no real serious interventions from the African Union itself. So we could have constructed an African Union system where our trade negotiation capacity there is the strongest in the world, but we haven't done that. We've positioned ourselves so that we can receive more donor funding at African Union rather than actually be able to negotiate tough. That's the same reason why we cannot have an African Union being hard on all the unfairness that happens to Africans all over the world. And yet we can just do it overnight. We can just say it's not going to happen. And we are not going to allow, without serious engagement, African countries to continue to negotiate agreements which tie themselves into knots down the road. So that's how I'm arguing at the moment. I'm not arguing against African Union. I'm not saying these developments are not important. I'm not actually, we should be gathering these because they are really important. But the big picture is still not right. And Lindia, that's why I also agree with a lot of what you're saying in terms of shifting analysis, social to political economy analysis and all that. But you see, you said something there that I wanted to kind of answer you back, Lindiwe. You said a lot of what we are talking about, or what I talked about, is idealistic, to use the term that you actually used. That's precisely the problem we have in Africa. We think that being idealistic is the wrong thing to do. Just doing practical things and responding to events and trends, so in my model, this is what we are doing. Anything that is high level and appears like we cannot achieve it, therefore it's not a practical thing, we should not focus on it. So Lindiwe, think about it. When the Europeans colonized us, they were being very idealistic for themselves. They were thinking, look at this continent, full of resources. We can take these people on. We can actually do it. And they did it. So why can't we be idealistic and then say we're going to do it? Lindiwe, that's really what I'm talking about. So the idea that idealism is only for Europeans and colonizers and the Chinese is what I'm arguing, that if you don't start envisaging a highly advanced African society whose institutions deliver a society that you want, if we don't start there, we'll keep reworking the institutions who were left by the colonials, and it's not delivering what we want. It slowly gets there. It's slowly, we imitate mimicry, but it takes forever, you see. So language, same thing. I'm not saying language should change overnight, but I'm saying, okay, let's just do a social experiment and see what would have happened to language in Africa if we had not been colonized. In Southern Africa, I think we would have continued to have different groups fight and compete all the time, integrating and creating new languages, but being able to communicate over larger and larger areas. It was already happening in Southern Africa. We're going to have more and more people being able to speak some Zulu, some Shona, some Sotho. It was already happening. But the moment we were colonized, that was now seen as a negative. Now, even the people who speak more or less the same language, you are told it's different, it's spelled differently. So although the Nguni languages are pretty much the same language, Xhosa, Zulu, Swati, Ndebele, call it whatever you want, those people should be sharing the same textbooks, it's the same language. But now the colonials come, they tell you it's different, you spell things differently, and now people drift apart when we should be drifting together. So I think code switching is not a problem for me. I don't think that our educational system can start by just shifting to the local languages. It can start by code switching. Now you allow children at any level to use more than one language and to interuse in a community, let me give you an example in the Midlands. Code switching in the Midlands of Zimbabwe is natural, it's automatic. People will use Shona and Ndebele, a little bit of, they've taken a bit of Xhosa here, a little bit of Tswana there. people communicate. So why can't we actually agree that even code switching in an educational formal process is not a problem? Why can't I throw in and develop a word in the middle of a Shona sentence if the people that I'm talking to will understand and eventually we're able to communicate across? That's why I think Swahili should just be declared an automatic official language in every country, and maybe one of maybe 2-3 big African languages should be thrown in, so that it's a 50-year agenda, Lindiwe. It cannot be, it can't happen in a few years. So Dr. Makarati, modernize, don't westernize, actually includes some of the fears that you have, which are justified. So we are still all human beings across the world. So honestly, we cannot say we are not copying anything from anybody. It's just how you copy it and you internalize it and you make it relevant. So modernize means make it relevant to your situation, to your cultural orientation, to your value system. But you can take a totally Chinese product or idea and make it African. And sometimes you only need to change 5–10% of it. So I'm not saying you throw everything out, the baby with the bathwater, but what you do, by the time you are done in reconstructing the legal system, it should be meaningful to an average African in the village. If it is still not, just because you think only Roman Dutch law can deal with criminal law, then we are still lost. Take the example of Zimbabwe. More than 80% of the cases in Zimbabwe are dealt with at community court level and below, traditional leaders and so on. And yet, the entire legal system is based on Roman Dutch law. So what's that? So we are not, most Africans and most people in the townships, in the village, have no capacity to take things to the high court and have all the expensive lawyers. It does not happen. So we are fooling ourselves thinking that the family and personal civil cases that burden the system, like in Zimbabwe, just look at the inheritance issue, the domestic violence issues, and all these issues. To think that the Roman Dutch legal tradition and the legal systems are going to deal with it is not possible. So people as Africans still believe that inheritance happens in a certain way. So family law is different. So what I'm proposing there, Dr. Makarati, is not to substitute laws, because this law is better in commerce, which is actually what has happened. So you said the Roman Dutch law is the commercial law. Therefore, it means that if anything is interpreted in customary law, it cannot be commercial. And for that reason, all aspects of customary law applied on inheritance or land or anything cannot be commercialized, because the colonials told us so. Only Roman Dutch law can deal with commercial activities. Does it mean to say we were not transacting commercially before it? No, we were. But it's the institutions that were involved. That's where the procedural aspect becomes important. So what I'm proposing is, don't just study the law. Study the legal traditions that created the laws. Study the legal systems that were put in place to actually then be able to discharge and execute and produce administrative justice. But if you look at the way customary law or African law is treated in almost every country, you don't even study the legal traditions. Where did it come from? What was the spirit? What was it trying to resolve? So there's so many, I mean, we could spend forever giving examples, but take inheritance. I mean, the legal tradition in Europe was that people inherit property, you know. But in Africa, the tradition was you don't inherit property, you inherit responsibilities. Because when your father dies and you're the eldest son, you don't inherit property, you inherit the responsibility. You are now the father. But everyone else will inherit certain responsibilities. Even the youngest brother will look after the mother, the sister will look after the dependent children. The assets are only then distributed according to the responsibility. So you inherit responsibility first. Now that has been turned upside down. So in the same country, you have dual legal system. But because Roman Dutch law is dominant, now I can be the eldest son and go and claim that I'm the heir apparent, I can inherit the property, you know, or I'm the spouse. I can inherit family. What is supposed to be family assets can now be inherited by one individual spouse. So I can inherit the property now and refuse to inherit the responsibilities left behind to look after the dependents. That's what I'm talking about. There's absolutely no reason why we can modernize by saying, if it is family land, if it is family property, it can go in a family trust or equivalent of a family trust, where the beneficiaries are all taken care of. Now we have modernized the system, as opposed to say, forcing it to say, no, we have to find one heir, or no, a spouse has to inherit what is supposed to be family property. Okay, so I think when we look closely at where we are agreeing and disagreeing, I would say generally we are agreeing violently. We are fashioning these disagreements into area of real, this is how we create new ideas. So Wazanai, when you're looking for disruptors and innovation, if you look at that model, Wazanai, and it's just a model, innovation is right across. You see, because it depends how you define innovation, because innovation is no single definition. The way you put it is a very good way of, so it's what needs to happen at any level to make things work. Okay, that's innovation. So if you look at that model, at event level, things are not working. You know, the school system is not functioning. The hospital system is not doing well. The banking system has excluded everybody, to use your example. So at event level, you go to the bank, you don't see poor people with only a few dollars. They can't open an account, they can't transact. So the trend, so those events lead to a trend. Now people really need to be able to transact, because everywhere they go to the market, they have to pay. They cannot always be carrying the cash, they are saving. And somebody innovates to solve a problem at the event and trend level. That's how mobile money was created. Innovation, because they have analyzed what's happening at event level, they've analyzed what is happening at trend level, and they say, what the heck? The system is not working. The banking system excludes these people. So I innovate. So innovation cuts across. It happens at all levels, including at generative conversations, generative visioning a new society that does not exist at all, or that has room for innovation. So I think we're just, it's a use of words. It's agreeing violently, I think. So Jesse, finally, I agree totally. Because at the end of the day, life is what we make of it. We Africans have to realize that we have to dream. That's why, Lindiwe, I would really say it's part of the problem that we Africans stop dreaming and then work for that dream and fight for it and achieve those high-level aspirations, and stop thinking it's only Europeans and Chinese who can think big and dream big. Why can't we? So the repairing and restoration process is long-term. It is really, I don't know how to put it, the trauma that is passed down from generation to generation that was the genius of the colonial system. Because they infused the fear in the actual institutions that we are talking about reforming. So all they did was to make sure that if you are sufficiently traumatized, like in the case of Zimbabwe, the colonials come in, the whites had been coming here for centuries without actually colonizing. When they eventually decided now, after Berlin Conference, now the British can take over this part of the world. They will have the pioneer column, the colonials, those who represent the investors, and a small army, and the missionaries right there. It was one full package. When they confront you in your village and you argue that you cannot take over our village, so what do? Of course, first of all, they shoot you, They tell you, you people, you are also heathens. We have to convert you. So who is going to be slaughtered first? Is the spiritual leader, is the head of the household, because they're also a spiritual leader. They are slaughtered in front of their own families, beheaded. And then the family is taken to the mission camp where they're drilled with Christianity for the next 6 months. When they leave that camp, they are actually thanking the colonizers that they killed those evil people who are their own parents. That's the beginning of trauma. It's deep-seated violence, deep-seated disruption of one's belief of everything that you believe to be life. When you associate that with harm and death and potential physical harm, parents have to pass it on to their children. Don't argue with these people. So they then pass this on into the institutions they create. You go to church, it's very clear. It's a stupid church because the whites go there, the blacks go there. But you're still told, the same people who brutalize you tell you Christianity is your savior. You know, so they put it in there. So you are sold a dummy, and then you continue believing what the colonial master told you. So the colonial master says to you, this is your God. This is evil. And what is passed down by the church is the trauma, which says it's more important to be afraid of not believing what you were told by the master. It's less important to think for yourself. It's more important to be afraid of what you were told. Okay, this is how the trauma keeps passing on. Because then in the educational system, in the religion, that message is strong. And it's sold so heavily, even up to today. It's just amazing how that system continues to reproduce itself. The DNA may be damaged, but it continues to reproduce itself. If the colonials had told our ancestors that, okay, we have beheaded your father, we have killed, but in actual fact, we're just doing it to annihilate you, but you have to continue respecting your ancestors, you know. We will be doing it today. So the master told us to revere our ancestors. Would be because the master said so. So Jesse, this is how trauma is passed down. People are embarrassed, humiliated, harassed to a point where you always have to make sure that you are not obviously following your tradition. You are trying to follow the master, the colonial master's tradition. That trauma is still here today. I'm sorry to say. So the language, religion, everything is a package. And I personally don't think that people have to, I mean, religion to me is just like anything else. It's a man-made institution. It's not created by God. God is not a Christian or a Muslim. So it doesn't really matter. After all, at a spiritual level, it doesn't matter what you believe in. It's still part and parcel of creation. If you believe a tree is your God, you actually have right, because it wouldn't be there. It's all part of the energy of God. So I think that boldness to be Africans, the love of being who we are, the realization that there's no civilization that's forever, the realization that the future belongs to us. There's not going to be one center of power in the world. The realization that when we reconnect to our broader understanding of life and the universe, our big strength of always being able to be happy no matter what, all those strengths, if they're turned around to producing serious activities, serious products and services for this world, we are untouchable. But we cannot continue doing half measures of, okay, to please the World Trade Organization, we sign this stupid agreement, we just do it, and then we see what happens. And then at AU, we create all these free trade areas which are trying to fight the same thing that we have just signed. We have to slow down on those things, turn down the volume. We should up the volume, which says, don't force us to do things which don't make sense for us. Don't harm us Africans deliberately, because we're gonna respond. And more importantly, if you really want us to develop going back to the first point that if Europe, US, China really want a developed Africa where the free trade zones work beautifully for us, the first thing they will be doing is ensuring that Africa has all the capacity and no inhibition to manufacture things for ourselves. Because if manufacturing is not going to happen, at the lowest level, in the village, in the township, in the small towns, if we are not a manufacturing society where we start from the bottom like the Asian tigers have, the food system, and create our own big industry from small producers, a light industry, and really see a broad-based society where the domestic market for all those products is right here domestically. If we don't have that, the free trade zone is only gonna support a small percentage of Africans. It will still be the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. We'll be in middle income traps all over the world. We hit a certain level because we don't have the domestic market. Then we curtail our own industrial growth. Then we continue to import imported garbage from overseas because we can't even manufacture dog food or can't manufacture, noodles. Toothpicks. What the heck? So I'm sorry, at my age, I'm not going to accept this idea that somehow these little efforts are what we are aspiring to do. There are steps in the right direction, but I think it's time for Africa now. We are at the right point. Tip the balance, think big, and tell the rest of the world, we are thinking big and don't mess around with us. We need fair deals. And African Union can do it. But as long as we are compromised, all these institutions, all the way up to African Union level, we keep doing small steps. So we will be at the event and trend level, hoping a disruptor comes in and doing something nice once in a while. No, we need an environment where disruptors are gonna be millionaires all over the place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that. We'll take our last 3 or 4 questions, and then Prof will respond, and then we'll close off the session. Musonza, we have Musonza, and then Wadzanai.
Okay, can I go?
Yes.
Okay, I think one of the things that we have to battle or undo is this misconception that Roman Dutch law or any other system that we are contending with right now was magically somehow emerged fully formed. It is also constantly evolving. The difference between Roman Dutch law and our traditional things is that we stopped engaging them in the broad way that Roman Dutch or any other law from any other country has been engaged by society continuously. So we don't have recent landmark cases, for instance, because the majority of the most important cases have been channeled towards the inherited legal systems and so on. So it gets fixed no sooner than we re-engage the dialogue with our institutions. It's about institutions that lead us into the future. I think that is where the nature of our modernization sits. We need to separate, I think, the idea of modernization from the societies who seem to be champions of it. The societies themselves are in many ways still quite primitive. That's why their jurisprudence and their judicial systems are still debating issues which really grow from way back. The thing is, they have been in the conversation, and so it's easy to pick it up because it's a constant process of correcting and revising. But then you constantly have people looking like you are hearing all the issues about Mr. Trump loading the Supreme Court in America so they could reverse Roe versus Wade. Maybe next time it will be some other case that supposedly advanced society, which means that humankind essentially are in a way primitive still. And they're trying, but because man can advance technology without advancing himself, and then technology and the advancement of the economy forces them to recognize that something has changed in the way the world is shaped, and we have to change how we relate to each other within that space, then forces them to enact laws that ensure modification of behavior on pain of punishment, sort of thing. So so Africans in that respect are no different from any other society. Where we are lagging is in our rate of transforming our environment as well, right? But that's not a bad thing, because it allows us to first transform ourselves. And if we have a transformed society-led development of our economy will serve our needs much, much better. The problem is the economies into which we are plugged, whose legal systems we are leaning on, and whose remedies we are subscribing to, are societies which have historically endorsed exploitative models of human interaction, where I can relate to you as chattel property of some kind and exploit you. Then a century or so down the line, I realize, well, okay, I have a problem now because I brought in 2 million of these people to achieve this end. Now they're not under that system anymore, and I need to protect myself against them. So let's create a law to protect us. And let's say they are now free, but still manage them. So it's all, if you look at it historically, you'll see that every law that is there is a response to a realization of a problem we created from a previous exploitative or aberrant behavior. So there's nothing magical in that. If we know what our society is going to be based on, an equitable order, whatever it might be, and our institutions are deeply informed by that, the traditional institutions are informed by that, by family, by community, over the individualistic models that we're inheriting, and the system works to reinforce and build that, we'll build a society that works in good, cooperative, community-based, community-focused ways. It's really up to any society to determine what they want and then fashion their laws and their social norms and whatnot around that, and to build institutions that then safeguard that. There's nothing Western or anything that needs to happen with regard to that. We can adopt technology, we can we can equip ourselves, because if the wheel exists, let's bring the wheel in here, but let's put it on an African vehicle and go forward. Let's not get stuck trying to reinvent what's there. Let's take it and use it. But in the process, we invent and create new things that serve us better and help that wheel to serve an African end. So yeah, our society and institutions can modernize. It's a matter of our will and determination to speak to them, engage them, and value them so that they become dynamic again. Right now, they are stagnant because they are being used for things that don't matter. But, well, they matter, but on the scale that maybe the doctor was talking about, we may think that they don't, but they can as soon as we plug them into that system. And I'll stop there. I'd like to say more, but I might become incoherent at some point. So I will stop there, but I hope that makes sense.
Thank you very much for that. Over to you, Wadzanai.
Thank you so much. Prof, yeah. I love this. I must say I love this. Can I just say that the one thing that irks me about the African Union, and I'm with you on your points, the person who pays your bills obviously has a vested interest in what comes out of the discussions. So the African Union cannot make decisions that are not Eurocentric when 98% of its funding comes from European sources. And this is why I'm saying that as Africans, we need to inform the Sekurus at the grassroots, the Ambuyas at the grassroots, that these decisions are being made on their behalf. And these decisions are not only going to disrupt, not the word disrupt, are not going to only impact upon their levels of poverty. These levels could impact for a time that they will never be able to see any change, because these things are signed over 20, 30, 50, 100 years. And so we need, I'm sure that half the people on this platform don't know that the free trade area is actually at quite an advanced stage. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are going to wake up tomorrow to find that they can get MTN from Nigeria or Vodafone from Europe, and they're all competing at the same level as Econet. And of course, the first thing we'll do as Zimbabweans is move to this new platform because we feel that our systems don't work. So I'm saying that if we are having these discussions. We cannot have these discussions without considering this wheel that's already, I mean, this train is already on a track and it's going, right? And this train it's empowering those who are already in a position to benefit from the free trade area, of whom the large majority will be the persons who are funding the African Union. So what will happen is Europeans will come and they will take, you know, the bulk of these investments, and Africans won't even know they've come. And again, we'll be talking about neocolonialism. That's the only point I was making, Prof, that if we're going to have these conversations, we have to have them with the grassroots knowing what their leaders are doing. Over.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Wadzanai.
I know, I was making a point.
For contributions?
Thank you, boys.
Please use the hand reaction button before we bring in Prof to close off the session, to respond and close off the session. Okay, over to you, Prof.
No, wow. You know, I really enjoyed this conversation. And as always, it's about the jump off point where we have action. So I think one and the last exchange with Wadzanai was so helpful for me. But I think if we look at what's happening on the continent, the positive thing is that Africans, we are awakening. We have come to a point of a realism, of realizing if we are not stupid enough and we don't wake up, you know, we are gonna be wiped out of this whole, if you want, human civilization. We are committing cultural suicide if we are not careful. But my worry is no longer as huge, because I've seen that's not going to happen. I think we have crossed the Rubicon, so to speak. We are not going to be wiped out like I used to worry maybe 10, 20 years ago. We are fully awake now. And the younger generation is going to do great stuff. And that's why I like the addition to this model from Wadzanai, that we, even if it's not perfect or even far from perfect, we can be still disrupting at each stage, creating new ideas that recognize that what's there is not really working. How do we make it work? I wish we had a disruptor for the education and religion, the disruptor for mobile banking and phone and ICT was fantastic. I'm looking forward to more disruptions across the board in other institutions where we are really trapped. So I would thank everyone so much. And what we are going to try and do probably falls into two categories. We continue to need to build this Sankofa movement, where we have deeper and deeper real addressing of specific sectors and specific ideas to practical fruition. I think that has to happen. And like I said before, some of it actually is more difficult to envision, but in practice, easier to do. But those are the probably difficult ones, like just ensuring that the educational system will restore some things at early age. Between 0 and 7 years is the stage where it doesn't matter what we think about any educational system. If it is not reflective of our society, it is not going to help. It can be the best in the world somewhere else in the world. The truth is, if those youngsters don't imbibe their own culture, their own systems sufficiently, they won't be able to modernize them. But if you first colonize their understanding of everything, then you expect them to adjust, is a problem. So I think that is one area where I think we need some people to attack the educational system, bang on. As same thing with the economic system. So that it's highly inclusive from day one. We can produce and manufacture on good mass production of raw materials and mass processing them right there within 20, 50 kilometer zones and mass consuming some of our own goods. We don't need to be exporting that much to be wealthy people. We can be doing it for ourselves. That's how we create stronger Africa in future. And I'm so thankful to everybody, and hopefully next week we might get in a guest speaker to tackle the next issue. I'm not sure, but I think in future we will try and bring in some guests as well on this before we close down this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you all for taking your time and your contributions, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Prof. Mandi, for a beautiful presentation. Big shout out to the DWP technical team for putting this session together. Please like our Facebook page, Dialogue with Prof. Mandi. The session will be available within the next 24 hours on our YouTube channel, Dialogue with Prof. Mandi Rukuni. Do subscribe so you never miss out on any content that we'll be posting. Thank you very much for joining us, and good night.